had to have somebody from New York on because like what's going on there? Like what's the buzz? And it's really interesting because Nick is a San Diego guy. Nick snapped the ball obviously for Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers over his career. Two guys who are, without a doubt, very quality top level quarterbacks. And that trade in 2004, a lot of people don't know that, but Eli Manning was drafted originally by the Chargers at number 1, and then they traded him to the Giants, and the Giants selected Phillip Rivers with number 4. And I think for a long time, I think people felt like the Giants won that trade, but then other than 2 Super Bowl years, I feel like Phillip has outperformed Eli every other which way. And I think most people would agree with that. And in San Diego, they're certainly happy with Phillip Rivers, but let's be honest, Eli does have the 2 rings. And so it's really kind of interesting. And there was another example. I mean, that was terrible clock management by Eli. And then his running back threw him under the bus, like telling him that he told him not to score. So, you can't write this stuff up, man. That's why the NFL, in my opinion, is like the best form of reality TV. You just can't beat it.
It's interesting to me when you start to compare all-time great players. This usually is the biggest discussion that people have when it comes to coaches and quarterbacks. And for me, it needs to be a deeper discussion, as you just mentioned, rather than just who's won Super Bowls. And that seems to be the beginning and end of the discussion for most people. Phillip Rivers has had a better career than Eli Manning. But the one thing I will say about Eli Manning is I think he should be inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame for 2 reasons. And that's that he is the only quarterback to lead 2 game-winning touchdown drives, not field goal drives, but had to score touchdowns in the clutch, and really led, as you know, much better than I do, a team in a low-seeded position to go on the road and make it through the playoff gauntlet on both those occasions.
Both times. I mean, they were literally ready to run that guy out of town both times. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, those 2 Super Bowls are probably 2 of the more, probably most entertaining Super Bowls in the last decade, maybe 2 decades. I'd say, yeah. I mean, that 2000 Super Bowl, with basically with what was his name, David Tyree. That was that catch. I mean, that was amazing, And then the following year, or not the following year, but like in 2010, again, the last second catch to win the score. I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, it was amazing. And then both against the Patriots, which. That's been pretty much the team of the decade. So, Eli Manning has definitely proved his worth in those instances, but the years that they haven't won, he's looked pretty awful.
Oh, they've done nothing. It's funny. It's either boom or bust. They won the Super Bowl, or they've missed the playoffs, or been one and done. I think it was the year before they won the Super Bowl. It might have been 2 years before. They made the playoffs for the first time, and they threw up a goose egg. They got shut out by the Panthers, like 23-0. And then the year after they won the Super Bowl, they were the 1 seed. You would think, wow, 1 seed, they're going to be at home. And the Eagles beat them and shut them down to like 10 or 11 points in that game. But yeah, they've pretty much done nothing and usually don't reach the postseason if they don't win a Super Bowl.
No, exactly. So we'll see. I mean, that division just looks awful this year. So going back to your original question, I think if Brandon Weeden can at least, just do game clock management, they'll be fine and they'll be competitive, and they should be in a position when Romo and Dez come back to, still win that division. Because, I mean, honestly, I don't see it from the Redskins and the Eagles right now. I mean, you never know what's going to happen there, but they're 1-2, and they barely won last week. So again, we'll see what happens. And the Giants, I mean, we've been talking about the last 5 minutes here. I mean, they're just, they're either boom or bust. So we'll see what happens.
This will probably take you like 45 minutes to answer, Tyler, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Fix my Cleveland Browns.
Are you from Cleveland?
Yeah, I'm an Ohio guy.
So
Buckeyes, Browns, Indians, the whole deal.
I got to ask you this. Okay, as a Browns fan, when did you move away?
So I moved. So here's my full story real quick. I grew up a Cowboys fan. So I'm growing up in the middle of Ohio, Akron, Ohio, and I'm getting one of these from Zane. All right, Cowboys. I just fell in love with the glamour team, Tom Landry, Roger Staubach, the whole deal. So I'm going way back.
Oh, yeah.
Danny White, Tony Dorsett after that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up a Cowboys fan. As soon as Jerry Jones bought the team and fired Tom Landry, I was done. Like,
Oh, me too.
and I was like as big a Cowboys fan as you can imagine. And so I dropped him immediately. And then my heart wasn't into the Browns. I just couldn't pick them up, even though I loved everybody else in Ohio. They were my teams. I just couldn't pick up the Browns.
Like 1988.
So yeah, 88, 80, 89,
okay.
before the 89 season, before they drafted Troy Aikman,
Okay.
fired. I dropped the Cowboys. Of course, Jimmy Johnson wins Super Bowls. That didn't even get me back on board. But then when the Browns left, I felt bad. And I had moved away by then. The Browns get kicked out of Cleveland, obviously. The Baltimore Ravens emerge, and then the NFL feels bad for the Browns, gives them a franchise back.
And the Ravens won a Super Bowl.
Yes, with Ozzie Newsome, a Browns great, running the show at GM. And so what happened, Tyler, was that when the Browns came back in 1999, and I was just explaining this to somebody the other day about being a fan. They were trying to choose teams, like, what team should I be a fan of? And I was like, it doesn't work that way. It's wherever your heart leads you. You just fall in love with a team. You can't say, well, I'm going to be a Denver Broncos fan. But so when the Browns came back, I thought, okay, I'm a Cleveland guy, Ohio guy through and through. I should be a Browns fan. So I'm technically a Browns fan. Do they have my heart? No, not really. But I'm a Browns fan.
Well, there's not much to cheer about. I mean,
no.
You've had like what, one competitive year since they've been reinstated. It wasn't that even the year they maybe finished like 8-8 or 9-6, but it was Derek Anderson's coming out party.
So yeah, 2007 they went 10-6.
Yep, but they didn't even make the playoffs that year, right?
They didn't. No.
Yeah, and that's like the best year they've had since they've come back in the league.
People probably forget that they did make the playoffs one time with Kelly Holcomb at quarterback in 2002.
They did.
They went 9-7. They lost to the Steelers.
Really? I didn't even know that. Wow. 2002. Yeah. Okay.
They snuck in one time.
So the Browns are coming to San Diego this week. Now I will not be there. I'm actually off to Denver tomorrow for the Vikings and Broncos. But the Browns are coming here. I actually asked Nick this the other day too, because I said, Nick, if the Browns are down like 21-3 or 21-10 at halftime, will we see Johnny Manziel? And he seems to think that based on Mike's system, Mike Pettin's system, that he won't abandon the McCown kid. I shouldn't say he's a kid. He's not a kid anymore. He's like my age. He's like 36, 37. But anyway, he doesn't see it yet. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of that team, because like there's nothing to be excited there. And I know it's your hometown team, but like Johnny came in there and won a game for him, and the other two times they really done nothing. So I don't know. I think you got to go. I think you got to go with Johnny Manziel.
I totally agree. I don't get it when you draft the kid in the first round. You have to just give him a pass last year, because there was just the situation was a mess. And he played the one game against Tennessee.
Yep.
They only let him throw it 15 times, but he hit on some big plays. They win the game. And Luke McCown is never going to be the guy that you want pulling the trigger for a playoff team. So
I mixed up. Is it Luke or Josh?
Oh,
I think it's Josh. I think Luke.
They got Josh. Luke's in Arizona.
No, Luke is in New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Okay. The whole separate side story, because I've actually joked. I don't know if you've been watching the TV commercials. But Luke McCown got that TV deal with like DirecTV or somebody about backup is Verizon backup satellites, and then now all of a sudden I'm like, you just jinxed Drew Brees right there, buddy. Anyway, so we'll see. Your Browns, probably another. Let's see, maybe 7-9 if they're lucky this year.
Yeah, if they're lucky. What was your Super Bowl pick to start the season?
Well, my Super Bowl pick, and I'm not kidding you, this was to start the season, and I'm still holding to it, and it's looking really good right now, and I think this would be an awesome matchup. Rodgers, Brady, Packers, Patriots. I think that'd be a phenomenal Super Bowl.
Yeah.
This is even before the NFL upheld the suspension, or I should reduce the suspension with Tom Brady. I just felt like even if he was suspended those 4 games, I felt Jimmy Garoppolo would go at least like 2-2. They'd be competitive, and I knew Brady would come back with a vengeance. They'd somehow maybe either be a wild card team or better. And so, yeah, from day one, I felt it was me Packers, Patriots, and right now that's looking really good.
I like it. I think that's what neutral football fans, obviously everybody wants their team, but neutral fans would want to see. They want to see the two great quarterbacks of the era face off.
Battle it off. It'd be a great Super Bowl. I think the biggest surprise this year is probably the Colts. I think a lot of people had huge expectations for Andrew Luck and the Colts last year. You know, they looked terrible that AFC Championship game, which of course is what spiked the whole Deflategate. But I don't think people expect them to be that bad as what they've been. I mean, they did win last week against the Titans, which aren't a bad team, but they did not play well at all the first 2 weeks. And to date, Andrew Luck, well, he might not even play this week. I don't know if you saw the injury report. I mean, he has not practiced the last 3 games, so supposedly has a shoulder injury, and he's turning the ball over like he is, Ryan Leaf. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I heard most turnovers in the NFL, I think, from the start of last season or maybe the year before.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the guy who's the golden child who the NFL is putting it all into. I mean, DirecTV is, and he's not played well the last, 7 or 8 games. Because do you play fantasy, or do you know much about fantasy football?
No, I don't. I know all about it, surrounded by people that play it. I don't play it, but
Andrew Luck last year was on a tear. And then he single-handedly lost a ton of people their fantasy championships last year because even if he just showed up and played remotely okay, they would have won, because he was just that good. But he was so awful the last 4 or 5 games. Like cause how fantasy works, he crushed it the whole season. So all the guys who had Andrew made the playoffs. But then playoffs come around and the guy literally laid goose eggs for 2 straight weeks, and all the guys who had Andrew Luck just didn't win. And so you take that with his start this year, and he's on like a 6-game skid of just pure awfulness right now. So
yeah, he gets credit for that win last week because he threw, I think, the game-winning touchdown, and they were down 2 scores in the third or fourth quarter. But I can't think of the guy's name because I had the Red Zone channel on, so I was all over the place. But one of their DBs picked off 2 passes and hit a pick 6, and if that doesn't happen, they don't win that game.
Yeah, he still had again, I don't know, I'm just making this up kind of off the top of my head, but he at least had 2 or 3 turnovers last week.
Yep.
And that's the 3rd straight week of him turning the ball over. And as you know as well as I do, if you're a quarterback in the NFL, you can't do that consistently and win.
Manning's obviously still getting the job done to a certain extent, but do you think he's pretty much done in regards to taking them deep into the playoffs?
Peyton?
Yeah.
I love Peyton. I mean, he's been a staple to the league. I think this is last year. That offensive line looks awful, and they have no running game right now because of that. And so it's all on Peyton's shoulders, but he does not have the zip. Now, the thing he has going for him is he still has talented receivers, with Demarius and with Emmanuel Sanders. I think losing Julius Thomas kind of hurts them a little bit, but I think Denver will be like a 9-7, 10-6 team. We'll see if they squeak in. I don't see them getting beyond the second round of the playoffs, though. And I think this is Peyton Manning's last year. So
okay.
We'll see.
I like Peyton
next year in Bristol, right?
Pardon me?
I said he might be joining you next year in Bristol.
Yeah, well, the guy's, he's phenomenal on the commercials, and he's got a bright future there. Not that he needs any more money, but
what would he do? He'd have to do something. So let's actually talk about that for a second. So what do you do at ESPN? I'm curious about this.
Okay, I've been at ESPN for 14 years. I'm in production operations management. So it was always my goal to be a sportscaster. So that's what I was a journalism major in college.
Okay.
And then I was a sportscaster for 10 or 11 years. My last job was as a CBS sports director at a CBS station in Mississippi, covering a lot of SEC. And then I was out of the business for a year. And for the last 14 years, I've been at ESPN. So production operations is basically we're in charge of the video operators, the camera operators, the editors of the